In this video, I shall be analyzing one of the most important games of the World Rapid Chess Championship, which was held in New York in the last week of 2024. This game was played by the Indian superstar Praggnanandhaa against the rising Russian player Volodymyr Murzin. This game was played in the penultimate round, and at this stage of the tournament, Murzin was leading the rest of the field. And if Praggnanandhaa succeeded in defeating Murzin, he would take the lead and he would have an excellent chance of winning the World Rapid Championship. Whereas if Murzin defeated Praggnanandhaa, he would be the next World Rapid Champion. So let's see what happened in the game. So this is the photo of the pre-game photo between Murzin and Praggnanandhaa. So, well, let's see how the game started. Praggnanandhaa was white, Murzin was black. White played e4, black played e5. White played knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. This is the Italian game. And Murzin played bishop c5, which is the safest response to bishop c4. And the move which is typical to the Italian game is the move c3, which Praggnanandhaa played. Well, the move c3 basically sends a signal that white is aiming for a slight asymmetry or imbalance. Since black's knight is developed from c6, white refuses to develop his knight from c3, and instead he places his pawn on c3 so that he can either play d4 immediately, or he can play d3 and he can develop his knight slowly to the king side, creating an imbalance where he will try to prove that his knight on g3 is more important than the knight on c6. So this is one of the ideas of Italian game if white plays d3. But in this game, white played d4. This is a move more in classical style, in romantic style. In the previous century, this move was very popular. After ed, white usually used to recapture with the c-pawn, creating a very dynamic game where white's e-pawn is hanging, but white is counter-attacking the bishop on c5. Black would generally play bishop b4, and then white would choose between whether to sacrifice the e-pawn with knight c3 or to play a safer move, bishop d2. However, in this game, Praggnanandhaa, playing white against Murzin in this crucial encounter, played e5. This is also a very popular move at top level, and this is the so-called Polish variation. Well, Praggnanandhaa does have some prior experience with this move, as we shall see, and he had played this move against the Polish grandmaster Jan Krzysztof Duda. I shall be showing you excerpts of the game later. Well, after e5, white, instead of recovering the pawn, is counter-attacking black's knight on f6. Now here, black also follows white's idea. Instead of moving his knight, he plays d5, which is the counter-attacking move. So both the players have started in counter-attacking fashion. Well, these are all standard theories, so neither Praggnanandhaa nor Murzin was thinking at this stage. Now Praggnanandhaa played bishop b5, and now Murzin moved his knight to e4. White took cd4. Well, let's pause for a while and understand the position. Here we already have an imbalance. White has a majority in the center, or on the king side. He has 4 pawns, and black has a majority on the queen side. Black has 4 pawns against white's 3 on the queen side. And the e5 pawn is basically spearheading white's attack. So typically white would like to attack on the king side because the pawn on e5 controls the f6 square, prevents black's pieces from coming to that square, and it gives white some space advantage on the king side. For black, one of the hopes is the d4 pawn is slightly weak because it cannot be defended by any of the white pawns. So black would do good to pressurize the d4 pawn while white would pay attention to attacking the king side. That's the imbalance in the position. Let's see how the game proceeded. Black played bishop b6. Well, this is the most common move nowadays. Black keeps his bishop on this diagonal so that it can pressurize the d4 pawn. However, the move bishop e7 is interesting. I mean, it's a safer move, trying to keep white's pieces at bay on the king side and covering some weaknesses or important square on the king side. But after bishop b6, white played knight c3. Well, this is the common move, developing his pieces towards the center. But in this type of position, black would normally deploy his bishop from g4. So after bishop g4, the reason why bg4 is so important is that it would pressurize both this d4 as well as e5 pawns. And that is why some players, they play the preventive move h3 first, preventing black from playing bishop g4. Well, in the game Praggnanandhaa played knight c3, but let me show you one example how the game can go if white had played h3. Well, this game was played between two very strong players. One of them is Jobava Badur from Georgia. He was white and he was playing against Alexander Grischuk, one of the strong players from strong grandmasters from Russia. So in this particular game, black had played castles, white would castle, and then black would go for a typical move, very typical for this variation, that is f6, challenging white's space advantage on the king side. He wants to remove this e5 pawn. How does white respond? He will take on c6 and then replace this pawn with his knight. So he would play bishop e3 first, defending the d4 pawn or overprotecting the d4 pawn, and whenever black plays fe5, white would go knight e5. This is the recurring theme of this particular opening. White would have a very strong knight on e5 instead of black's double bishop, or especially the light square bishop, which black has, white doesn't have. Well, in this particular game, Alexander Grischuk had played bishop a6, attacking the rook. The rook went to e1 and black played a very surprising move. Instead of defending his c6 pawn, he continued to attack the rook. He played bishop a5. So both these bishops, although they are on the queen side, they are actually aiming on the king side. Well, remember the bishop moves diagonally. So if the bishops are placed on the queen side, they would aim on the king side. So here after bishop a5, well, it looks very normal, but the point is after knight c6, white is actually forking the queen and the bishop. And Alexander Grischuk had willfully sacrificed his bishop so that he could divert the knight from e5 and he could attack on the king side. And that particular game ended very interestingly. White accepted the sacrifice and black sacrificed another exchange. So first he sacrificed a piece, now he's sacrificing his rook for a bishop. And here white played knight c3, allowing black to go for a perpetual check after rook g2, king g2, queen g3, the queen supported by the knight on e4, and the king has to go to h1, and then black kept on checking white king continuously, and it was a draw. Well, here actually white could have accepted the rook sacrifice, but then black would go queen f2 check, king h1, the bishop would come to f1 from a6, threatening queen g2 checkmate, and once again we would have a draw when white accepts the bishop sacrifice. Black would play knight g3 check, forcing king h2, knight takes f1 check, forcing king h1, and once again we would have non-stop knight g3 and knight f1 checks. So that is how Alexander Grischuk had drawn against Jobava Badur. This game was played in the year 2015, and that is theory. I'm sure both players were aware of this move. So Praggnanandhaa went knight c3. And black played castles, white played bishop e3. Bishop belongs to e3 because white overprotects or give additional protection to his weak pawn, so that the pieces can leave this pawn and move freely. So here black played a slightly surprising move. Well, in this position, Praggnanandhaa had played twice against the Polish grandmaster and former world junior champion Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Incidentally, Duda was one of the members of the world champion winning team of Gukesh against Ding Liren. So in 2022, Praggnanandhaa played twice against Duda, and with white pieces he won both the games. And those games went with bishop, Duda had played bishop g4, which is the most common and obvious move in this position, keeping pressure upon d4 pawn by pinning this knight, and also planning to play f6 and putting pressure against the e5 pawn. So for both this, putting pressure against e5 and d4, pinning the f3 knight was essential. So here white played h3, pushing the bishop back, and then white went queen c2. I would like to show you another idea and another perpetual check which black can give if white castles. This looks like a very normal move, but then if black wishes, he can force a draw upon white by playing knight d4. This is a brilliant knight sacrifice. Well, but resulting only in draw. If white takes bishop d4, black would capture bishop f3. White would play gf3. Now the king is weakened. White would play queen g5 check, king h1, queen f5, with the idea of playing queen h3 check. So in this position, if white plays fe4, black would first take this pawn check, and then black would capture this bishop. And whenever white, when white recaptures on d4, black will keep on checking the king, queen g4, queen h4, and this king cannot escape non-stop checks. And after queen f5, if white plays knight d5, black would play queen h3 check, forcing king g1, and now the key move in this entire sequence, that is knight to g3 with the threat of queen h1 met. White is forced to capture this, and then black can play queen g3 and keep on checking on h3 g3. After king h1, queen h3, and the game is drawn. So this is how black can force a draw if white plays castling. And if black wants to play for more, he can always go moves like f6 instead of sacrificing the knight. So here Praggnanandhaa had played queen c2 against Duda. Well, we are not in the main game. We are still going through the prior experience of Praggnanandhaa, queen c2, and Jan-Krzysztof Duda had played, well, in one game he played bishop a5, and after castling he tried to repeat the drawing combination by playing bishop f3, gf3, and now he wanted to play queen g5, check. He can't play now because of the bishop. So first he played knight d4, removed the bishop from defense of g5, and then he played queen g5, check. After king h1, he played bishop c3. First he removed the knight, and then he played queen f5. Duda against Praggnanandhaa in 2022 Rapid Championship. Here black is threatening knight g3, check. It's a discovered attack. Black would capture white's queen. Black is also threatening queen h3, check, and knight g3. Well, these are the moves which black is threatening, and black probably thought he has a forced draw in this position, but white played rook fc1, defending the queen, and black could not get compensation. Praggnanandhaa had managed to win that game. The second time they played the same position, instead of bishop a5, Duda played bishop g6, which is a good move actually. The point is black is threatening discovered attack, and if white plays bishop d3, black would play knight b4. This is winning for black, attacking the queen, attacking the knight, bishop. So here Praggnanandhaa played queen b3, and instead of, well, knight a5 or knight e7, which are good moves, Duda had played knight c3, and this was another instructive mistake, because Praggnanandhaa first he exchanged on c6, and then he took back c3 with his queen. So finally the pawn on c6 remained weak for a long time, and Praggnanandhaa managed to win the second time against Duda. Well, with this experience, Praggnanandhaa had repeated this opening against Murzin, and Volodar Murzin, the Russian talent, he played bishop f5 instead of bishop g4. Well, I feel the move bishop f5 is a small mistake, because the most important points of counterplay for black is to go f6 or pressurize this d4 pawn. In either case, bishop g4 is the most normal move. I mean, this move pins the knight and removes the defender of both e5 and d4. But after bishop f5, Praggnanandhaa continued with normal development, and Murzin, he exchanged the knight and then he broke f6. Well, as we have seen, one of the ways how white should respond against f6 is, after exchanging on c6, replacing the e pawn with his knight, and the knight in the center would give white a pleasant advantage. So one of the moves which white could have played is exchange and take, and then go knight e5. This would give white a small advantage, but white played queen d2, which is also a good move, connecting the rooks, and he has a deeper plan behind this move. Black played bishop e4. First he wants to remove the knight, and then he wants to take fe. White captured bishop c6, and black took back on c6. Had he taken on f3 first with the aim of breaking white's king position, white would simply capture a pawn, and white would be a pawn up. Black would not have sufficient compensation. So, well, after bishop c6, black took back bc6, and white played ef6 with the intention of playing knight e5. Now this is a critical moment of the game. Murzin, playing black, went for the risky move, that is, he played bishop f3, damaging white's pawn structure, but at the same time sacrificing a pawn, because as we shall see, after fg7 the game was very interesting and white had a very good chance of winning. Now here Murzin could have played the safer move queen f6, but that would allow white to play knight e5, and now the intention behind the move queen d2 is revealed. white is threatening knight d7, forking the rook and queen. If black plays rook d8, white would go bishop g5, skewering, attacking the queen. When it moves, white would capture the rook and be an exchange up. So that was the idea behind playing queen d2 in the first place. Well, so after queen f6, knight e5, black may have to go something like queen d6, and a probable variation would be rook e1, centralizing the rook. After black plays rook e8, white can go f3, pushing the bishop back, and then, well, he can play if this bishop on b6 is, by the way, it's totally out of defense. So after a5 and bishop f2 with the idea of bishop g3 or expanding the kingside majority, white would retain some advantage. So that is how the game might have gone, but Murzin will not have anything of that sort. He played bishop f3 immediately. And remember, this was a rapid game, so both players didn't have sufficient time to think and calculate everything. They were playing on intuition, and we had a great game, as we shall see. White took fg7, another intermediate move. Instead of taking this, he first captured this pawn, attacking the rook instead. Black played rook f7, which is better than king h7 because black would take this with the rook with attack against white's king. This, and once again here black, instead of taking this pawn first, he played queen f6 with the idea of, well, he's attacking f3 and putting his queen near the white king. Now white played f4, protecting his pawn, and here black went queen to f5. The most normal move seems to be rook g7 check. Well, let's pause for a while and evaluate the position. White is still a pawn up, but black is attacking white's king. Both the kings are exposed on the king side, but black is slightly faster in bringing his rook. Another very important point to note is that white has a bad bishop, the bishop which is restricted by his own pawns, but it's a useful bishop because it defends lots of important squares. For instance, the f4 pawn, and we shall see the other important squares as well. Now black's bishop, although it's a good bishop, it's totally out of play, out of defense, out of attack. Had this bishop been on d6, the story would have been completely different. So because the bishop is on b6, white has a very pleasant advantage. As we shall see, after rook g7, well, Murzin had played queen f5, but had he played rook g7, white would go king h1 and queen g6. This is probably what black had thought initially while going for this position, because white cannot go rook g1. Black would have queen e4 checkmate. Okay, so this is black's plan. Well, it's not checkmate exactly because white can continue with moves like f3, but black will win the piece and win the game anyway. So, but the reason why this queen g6 move fails is white can simply play f3, defending g2 with his queen, and now the bishop on e3 would help play rook g1. White would have a completely winning position because of his extra pawn. So black did not play rook g7. Instead he went queen f5. White played king h1. Black played, well, black played rook g7. And once again white cannot go rook g1 because of the obvious move queen e4 check. We have seen the same position previously. So here white played queen to e2. This is an excellent move. Now white wants to bring his queen up on f3, and also he is, well, he can play f3 supported by his queen after rook g1. So queen e3, e2 is a very good defensive move. And to continue his attack, black played king f7, which is very interesting. He could have gone king h8, or maybe he could have played simply rook e8, but after queen f3 white would retain advantage thanks to black's bishop on b6, which is out of play. Well, after king f7 white played queen f3 and black went rook g8. Black is doubling his rooks. White played a very instructive move, that is, he played rook a e1 with the idea of, well, not allowing the king to escape, because now the rook would control this file. White's basically threatening bishop d2 and rook e5. Rook e5 hitting the queen, and then white would attack against the exposed black's king. So after rook e1, black played queen g4. Now black is going for an endgame. Black is a pawn down. So in general, whenever you are behind in material, we should avoid piece exchanges. But here black, despite being a pawn down, is going for an endgame because he feels he can draw this game. How? Well, white exchanged the queens, and here white played a very nice move. Had he played rook g1, which looks like the most natural move because white would exchange pieces, he's a pawn down. But after the exchange of rooks, although white is a pawn up, black has a repetition of moves. He can go bishop a5 attacking this pawn, forcing white to go bishop d2, and the bishop can actually come back to b6 with the idea of playing c5. Well, c5 undoubling his pawns, advancing his majority and also opening diagonal for his bishop. So that way black would create counterplay and he can draw the game easily, because white's extra pawns are basically double pawns which can be easily blocked by the king by standing on the opposite square of the bishop. So he can either keep his king on f5 or f7. White will be unable to advance the pawns. So this is how black was planning to draw the game, but Praggnanandhaa played something which is very instructive. He went rook c1 instead. Now he wants to go c4 and attack the queen side. Black played king f6, centralizing his king. White played c4 with the idea of attacking on the queen side. Black played king f5. Now the king comes with full force in the end game. White played c5, attacking the bishop, forcing the bishop to go to a5. And now white played a series of brilliant moves. First he played rook b1. Now he is trying to basically trap this bishop. The bishop doesn't have many good squares to go. So the move rook b1 has, well, white takes this file and also controls the b4 square of the bishop. Black goes rook g2. He wants to come in king e4. Since black is playing virtually with one piece less on the queen side, he is activating his king and he's playing with an extra king. The king on h1 is stuck in the corner. Unfortunately, king e4 is not possible because of f3 check, and that is why black played rook g2 first. Now he wants to play king e4 and come inside white's position. Black is a pawn down, black is attacking. Now white played rook to b3. The idea behind this move is, well, white wants to keep his rook on this rank, and also he wants to attack the queen side, attack the opponent bishop and invade through the queen side. Now black played king e4, all according to plan. And here white played another very nice move. Instead of playing rook a3 directly, which would allow black to play bishop b4, and if white captures the pawn, the king would come in, and well, the king would basically come to e2, removing this rook and aiming for rook g1 checkmate. For example, if white plays rook here on b1, the king would come to e2, not caring about this bishop, because there's a checkmate on g1, and after king e2, any move like rook c7 would allow king bishop e1 followed by king f1, or directly rook g1 checkmate. So this is how black was aiming to counterattack. After king e4, white was very careful. He played rook b1 first. Well, the idea is to take away the b4 square from the bishop and then attack the bishop. The bishop would be trapped. Black played king f3, all according to plan. If he played a move like, say, h5, any other move except king f3, then white would play rook b4, and if bishop b4, hoping for rook b4, rook g1 checkmate, white would go instead first f3. This is a very important intermediate move. Before capturing, we first play f3 check, forcing the king back. Now the bishop from e3 is controlling g1. We can capture the b4 rook, bishop. So this is how white would have won against a move like any other move like h5. So black played king f3. He came inside the position. He had to do something on the king side, but that allowed white to move freely with his pawn. The passed pawn now creates confusion in black's camp. f5, king e2. Well, black is aiming for something like bishop e1, covering this rank, and then black would play king f1 and rook g1 checkmate. That is black's idea. White did not care. He advanced his pawn, f6. Now at this stage, both the players were running short of time. They were playing virtually in seconds. They were unable to calculate, and they were intuitively playing their moves very fast. Here, the point is, after bishop e1, black is threatening rook g1 checkmate, but white has a very nice defense. You can pause the video, find white's defense, and then, well, white would simply give up his rook, rook e1 check, king e1, rook b1 check, controlling the g1 square with his rook, and then advance f7. This rook is overloaded. It's defending g2 as well as defending against the promotion. So white would win at least a piece. So this was white's defense against black's attack. The rook went back so that in the final position, this rook will not be overburdened. And then this is the position where, well, white first repeated moves. We have the same position twice. Probably because they were running short of time, they repeated moves to get some increment. And in this position, Praggnanandhaa made a historic blunder, a blunder which cost him the World Rapid Championship title. He played rook 1 b2 check. And well, instead of rook b2, the simplest win was simply advancing the pawn as per his original plan. f7 attacks the rook. If the rook goes to f8, white would play, now he would go for this check. The king cannot come to f3 because that would allow discovered check with the b3 rook, and bishop h6 would attack the f8 rook. So that is why the king would have to go to the first rank. And now it's not black, but white who would be checkmating black. f4, a move like rook f7, rook f2 check, king e1, and rook b1 checkmate. So although the king played a glorious game coming all the way up to checkmate white, but finally the black king itself gets checkmated. However, in time pressure, white played rook 1 b2 check, the king went to f1, and then white played rook b1 check once again. Well, black is actually threatening rook g1 checkmate, and even if white plays f4, defending g1 with his bishop. Still, black would play rook g1 and the other rook would land on g1, checkmating white. So this is the problem with white's position, and now white played rook b1. Black covered the check with his bishop, and now there is no defense against rook g1 checkmate. Well, white can still play a move like h4, but that will not help him because rook g1, king h2, the other rook would be on g2, and finally this is a checkmate. So here, after rook bishop e1, black is forced to give up his exchange, and suddenly he is in an absolutely losing position. The remaining moves were rook b1 check, the king went back, bishop f4, black took this pawn, the dangerous pawn on f6, and white played bishop g3, black played king d3 attacking d4, rook b4, rook g4 attacking d4. This is a winning position for black anyway. So, well, rook b7, rook f7 defending c7, f4 somehow not allowing the rook to swing, but h5 threatening h4, king g2, h4, pinning the bishop, the king went up attacking the rook, but now black ended the game with an exchange sacrifice. He took the bishop, giving up his rook, but then he played g2 with the intention of promoting, and it is in this position white resigned, because had he gone rook b1, black could have played rook g7 check, followed by promoting his pawn, winning this rook. So this is how Praggnanandhaa came so close to defeating the leader of the tournament, Volodar Murzin, and he failed to defeat him because of time pressure. And Murzin went on to become the world rapid champion. So he is the new world rapid champion, which ended in New York. Many of you may be aware of the controversy which was created by the dress code of the previous world champion Magnus Carlsen. Unfortunately, I won't go into those controversies. I would like to congratulate Murzin for winning this world championship, and hard luck to Praggnanandhaa next time. Definitely he can win, because he certainly has the strength to beat the best players of the world. I hope you enjoyed today's analysis of this game, and I shall be bringing you a typical game from the World Blitz Championship very shortly, an instructive game. I hope you will enjoy the next videos also. So keep watching the game of the week. Goodbye.